Welcome to AI-powered talent acquisition. Using AI is really going to help us drive efficiency and improvement in talent management, and in this course we're going to discuss how AI is used specifically in HR and recruiting and what are some of the various tools and services we can use. As far as expectations, we hope that you're going to learn how AI's role in talent, specifically around sourcing, screening, and upskilling, is really taking place in improving talent acquisition. We're going to also learn about ethical AI considerations. We'll learn about how we can implement AI into our talent acquisition processes. And we'll learn about future trends. And lastly, how we can cultivate trust, innovation, and efficiency in HR using AI. Now, there's specifically 6 modules. The first is going to cover what exactly is AI in talent management. We'll then dive into how AI is improving sourcing and screening. We'll talk about interviewing and selection. We'll talk about upskilling and development. We'll then proceed and discuss how we could implement AI in our acquisition strategies. And then lastly, we'll talk about where AI is and where it's going to go in the future. We have a lot to cover in the course, so let's get started. Before we get started, let's do a short introduction to your instructor. My name is Joe Holbrook, and I'm the CLO of Tech Commanders in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been in the world of information technology for over 25 years. My start to information technology was actually a result of my military service, where I served in the Navy as an electronics technician, and from there I actually was one of the first to learn HP Unix that was going to be deployed on large aircraft carriers. With that said, I was able to leave the service with a skill set that was in high demand right before the dot-com bust. Now, when it comes to certifications that I hold a number of different certifications, from cloud to FinOps to even data storage certifications. Now, I've had the opportunity throughout the 2.5 decades of working in IT to work for various vendors such as EMC, such as VMware, such as other vendors like 3PAR, which is now HPE Storage. I've also had the opportunity to work for a lot of VARs such as Dimension Data, and also government integrators such as SAIC, Booz Allen, and a number of different others. I've had the opportunity as well to serve as professional services leads in companies such as Brocade Communications. Flew around the world and was able to install numerous storage area networks and train lots of different partners and also customers. Now, I'm also a published book author and widely published course author as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and continue on with the course. I look forward to working with you and helping you prepare for a career in information technology. Before we get started, make sure you download the course content. There's a complimentary ebook that's part of the course, as well as a course presentation, and also some infographics. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Welcome to Module 1, Introduction to AI and Talent Management. In this module, we're going to be discussing how exactly AI is implemented with talent management. We'll talk about some of the current challenges with recruiting and hiring really good people, and we'll talk about how AI is really facilitating better hiring. We'll also talk about how we could use AI to not only find the right candidates, but also to facilitate additional areas like training and also career development and other areas that are really important to companies as well. Then we'll talk about the ethical considerations of using AI. For example, we'll discuss why AI can really benefit the organization, but also how AI can be a challenge to deal with if the AI isn't exactly sourcing the right people or can be discriminatory. These are things we'll talk about in this module. We have a lot to cover, so let's proceed to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about how AI is used in talent management. Now first, let's clarify what exactly is talent management. We're really referring to recruiting. We're talking about how we could really develop great employees, how we can retain employees, and how do we really increase the employee production, the potential. How do they perform, right? It's all about bringing together people and facilitating the best possible outcome. At least that's how it should be. So it's really about prioritizing employee experience, really making sure that the workplace is going to be conducive to really great outcomes for the company and also the employees as well. Now, it is important to realize as well that every company is going to look at talent management somewhat differently, but from a textbook perspective, this is really how it should look from a high-level perspective. Now, every company is going to treat people very differently. We know that. We also know that they may recruit people very differently, pay people differently, and overall, talent management should really be about bringing in the best people and keeping the best people. When it comes to the current challenges in talent management with the processes in place, there's a lot of things that really can be resolved using different types of technology, and AI is just one of them. So, for example, poor hiring strategies. And this can be a result of the recruiters that are hired. It could be the pay level. It could be the job requirements. For example, if you go to LinkedIn, you'll see some job requirements are so descriptive and they're really, in a nutshell, restrictive to who would even want to apply to them. On the other hand, a good set of job descriptions should bring in a good amount of applications. One of the things I've found as well is when it comes to recruiting, the language barrier can also be a challenge as well, especially when a lot of these companies, the larger ones, will hire these outsourced recruiting firms and they may speak English, but it's not English that is something we're used to, or they speak so fast that it's a turnoff. For me, I don't know how many times I've just decided not to even pursue a role just because of the recruiting company they hired or the recruiter that is dealing with me. So when it comes to trying to identify talent, it's really about not only who is performing, but who can perform better, and how do we identify that? Management really needs to be proactive in this area. Now, another area is about employee performance. And again, evaluations, how they're managed, how they're analyzed is very important as well. Now, training is another area too that can definitely be challenging to track, especially if the company doesn't have a really solid LMS in place, LMS being a learning management system, or someone managing the training itself. So how does AI play in this? Well, AI can really help transform processes. It can transform how people are hired, how they are discovered, how they're rated, for example, from a performance perspective. And it's important as well to consider that not all AI is created equal, and when we refer to AI, it's not AI, for example, that we would use for writing content. It would be very specific to using programs that are designed to scan resumes. They're designed to look at cover letters. They're really looking at keywords and summary in most cases. Now, Gartner is a well-known organization and really an analyst firm. They do a lot of reports. They look at the market and do a lot of surveys. They sample in, right? There's a lot of things that they look at. And one of their reports came up with a number of 81% of the HR leaders that were sampled do use AI to boost productivity in their hiring processes. It's also very important to realize that the rapid adoption can be beneficial, but it could be harmful at the same time. For example, I was reading a blog post on Medium, I think it was, and there was a description of how a company decided to go out and invest in these AI hiring tools, and they were built into CRM and other solutions as well. And what had happened was the AI was really coming off as biased. In other words, it was looking for very specific types of people. And this was something that was interesting because it shouldn't be happening, but this is something, too, that you do read about in the paper, and it's going to happen. AI is only as good as the programmers, the data entry professionals in reality, in a lot of cases, who program the AI to look for certain things. So with AI, it's really going to excel at areas that are defined really well. So if you're able to have it look for very specific keywords, it's going to do really well. On the other hand, if you're looking for AI to look for potential in someone, that's probably not going to be a good use of AI. It's just not going to be able to do that. And the reason is because AI is not going to be able to look at a resume, look at a work history and say, you know, this is a progressive approach to a career. In other words, this person has went from one position and got promoted and then got promoted again and took a different type of role that's more challenging. AI can't do that. It can look for keywords. It can look for phrases, but it's not going to be able to say, oh, this person is probably going to be a better fit for the organization or for the role because they're more adaptive or because they're taking on more challenging roles, if that makes any sense, right? So don't look at AI as the solve-all solution. It's just not that. Okay, what are the technologies that are used in talent management AI systems? And further on in the course, I'm going to go through several of these applications. I'm going to talk about them, how they work. We'll go into some short demos as well. But just be aware that we're going to be using machine learning. This is going to be used in a lot of cases to screen resumes, to look at top candidates. So when you go to LinkedIn, you see that top candidate. You'll see that your match is, 80% or however it's displayed on LinkedIn. And this is using AI. It's just using LinkedIn's version of AI to match a candidate to a role. Also, too, LinkedIn uses AI to promote the role to specific candidates as well. So when a company pays LinkedIn to promote a role, LinkedIn is actually looking for very specific keywords. It's looking for very specific types of phrases, and I'm sure there's other things in the back end that may be proprietary that isn't clear from documentation, but just be aware that this is a good use of AI. Now, NLP. This is a term you may not have heard of. It's a term that comes up more and more And it's really coming down to natural language processing is the term. And what it's supposed to do is look at how something's written and try to make an assumption that this is going to be a good outcome. And a good way to sort of give you an example is, let's say a candidate goes from a junior engineer role to a senior engineer role. Well, based on that, or based on how a phrase is written, it's able to, at least from a high-level degree, say, well, this is probably going to be a better fit for the role. So this is, again, something that can be implemented using NLP. And I'll talk more about that coming up as well. Then we also need to look at the different intelligence platforms that are used to connect assignments and basically analyze the assignment based on how the candidate responds. A good example of that is when you're doing an interview, and this is very common with coding interviews, where you're going to be proctored, you're going to have someone watch you, and this is true for testing as well. So if you want to take a certification exam, a lot of them are going to have proctors or use AI proctors that'll basically be looking at how you look around the room, looking at how you look at the screen, how your hands move, do you reach in your pockets, right? These are things that are going to happen with an intelligent platform. So the goal is to look at, again, how you're responding. And based on that behavior, it can tell, for example, are you a people person? Are you more social? Are you nervous? These are things that it can possibly extrapolate. I don't know if it's really the best use of AI in a lot of cases because some people may just get nervous for whatever reason. And that doesn't mean that they're not a good candidate. It just means that maybe they just don't interview well. Now, as far as recruiting tools, this can be anything from using very specific ads on YouTube to using, for example, webinars, to using anything from, and I'm forgetting the name of exactly the tool that would be used, but basically, for example, it could be like a chat bot is very similar to where it's going to ask you about what you're looking for in a job, and it'll prompt you to basically answer another question, and then based on that, you'll get a different result, right? So this is, again, a common recruiting tool that could be used. And then when it comes to AI-driven tools, now this, again, is a combination of everything we just talked about. And I'll talk about some of the common platforms out there further on the course. I'll hold off on discussing it now, but just be aware we're going to dive into some of these further on. So with that said, we have a lot to cover, so let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about leveraging AI for candidate sourcing. Now, when it comes to candidate sourcing, this is really how companies look for a suitable job prospect, a candidate, and basically determine, is this candidate a good fit for the role? Now, the common approaches companies use for finding candidates can be everything from social media to professional networks to job boards such as Indeed or ZipRecruiter. Employer referrals could be internal or external as well. Now, the goal of an HR organization, a recruiting firm, even the company should be really to maintain a pipeline of suitable candidates. In other words, we typically see, for example, on LinkedIn, a lot of roles that may be posted pretty routinely, and they may not actually fill for 60 days or 90 days, or the company will just reset it, repost it basically. And sometimes that's really more of a pipeline. That doesn't mean that the job's open, but they're just looking for candidates. In a lot of cases, that's really not something they should be doing unless that there is really a valid role coming up. But again, the pipeline is important to have. So basically, you want to have as many candidates as possible apply for the role. When it comes to candidate sourcing, it is important to realize that your job as an HR or a recruiting professional or even a hiring manager is to try to fill that role as quickly as possible with the best candidate, of course. Now, what are the challenges that typically come with finding candidates? That could be everything from talent shortages to competition to trying to get that passive candidate to become an active candidate. So one of the things that in the world of IT, for example, especially during the boom times, is you constantly have recruiters ask you, are you available? Are you looking for a new role? Are you passive? Are you active? Right? These are things that you'll run into. Now, when it comes to sourcing, candidates can be found in any number of various resources. So I have seen people get jobs off of Reddit. I have actually been offered or at least solicited to apply for a role on Reddit, for example. I've also seen people contact me, of course, on LinkedIn. And other people may have been contacted off of any other platforms that they're on, like ZipRecruiter or Indeed or Monster or Dice, right? Just a number of different areas that a candidate could be hosting their resume on or just be available providing input. Another unusual place to find candidates could be GitHub or GitLab. Now, if you're looking for coders, these are going to be the folks that are contributing to code. They're going to generally be looking for work in a lot of cases. So a great place to look for a hard-to-fill role. Okay, sourcing costs. So some of these could be free, some of them will cost more. Some other challenges could be the process that they're going to screen people. For example, if you're hiring someone to be a front desk clerk, the screening process probably won't be as strict as if you're looking for someone to maintain financial data, right? The screening process will be a little bit different in a lot of cases. Now, if you're a government contractor, you also have a clearance process to go through in a lot of cases. Experience for the candidate or cultural fit actually is another one. Remote work. Now, this is something that has been around a while, but has really taken off since the era of the COVIDs. Now, remote work is highly popular to a lot of candidates because it allows them the freedom of living where they want or where they can afford to actually, or allows them to have just more free time without commuting back and forth. It allows them to have a side gig or two. It also allows them maybe to be with their kids more. So this is a trend that really isn't going away, even though a lot of companies are trying to force it on people to go back to the office. It isn't going to go away, especially for highly sought after candidates. They still call the shots. When it comes to leveraging AI specifically, you could use a number of different AI systems, CRM apps, even recruiting platforms that have AI built in. It could be used to identify candidates. It could be used for passive and active sourcing. Skills and qualifications is another area that will certainly be used with AI because it's probably the simplest to implement. Looking for keywords is really the approach that's used there. Now, predictive analytics is a little bit different. This is where AI can be used to provide more or less a report in a lot of cases of how the candidate is viewed by the AI system and does it meet the requirements of the company. As an example, let's say the company has strict requirements to have a degree in a certain major or from a certain university or type of university. Well, again, AI can look at a state college differently than going to Harvard or going to Brown University or going to Stanford University, right? So these are things that AI can do and provide that insight. Another thing, too, is that based on the job history, AI could predict how likely this candidate will stay in the role. So, for example, if you change jobs every 3 months and the company is really trying to impose some loyalty or expects it, then you may not get rated as well as someone else who's been in the same job for 10 years. Bias reduction. Now, this one here is a really interesting animal, for lack of a better way of saying it. Now, for those that have seen the news, you'll see that a lot of these AI systems, especially the ones that are used for content creation, are not really unbiased from a political perspective or from even a, I guess, cultural perspective is probably the most appropriate way to say it. But in general, we want to make sure that our AI systems does not look at demographics in a way that is inappropriate, illegal, etc. And I talk about this fairly extensively in my AI ethics course, and that course may be available on the platform you're viewing this now, or if you're interested to go to techcommanders.com, it's available there. Now, personalization at scale. This is where candidates can not only interact with the system, but the recruiter or HR can interact with the system as well and have AI work its magic in trying to have, for example, the candidate look at the things that they want to and react to the things that they want to. Now, this is a combination of a few things. For example, gamification, but also a good way to look at it is if you go to Amazon and you know how you have like the recommended products or suggested for you, the terms may be a little different, but the point is that a truly dynamic candidate sourcing system should have the ability to prompt the users, the candidates, to look at a job. That's really what we wanted to do. And the reason is because we may get the right candidate who is prompted to look at a job because there is something of interest to them. On the other hand, if we're not promoting the job or we're not using the right keywords, then that job is probably invisible to the right candidate. Diversity and inclusion, DEI, is another term that's widely used. Now again, this is another area I cover in my ethics course, but in general, we have to be careful with how we use AI systems, and having bias is generally not a good thing based on certain factors, and I'll leave it at that. But companies do promote this, and this may or may not actually get the best candidate, but it gets the ones that meet the quotas. This is the reality, the dirty little secret that's used in the world of basically ESG and all of these multinational companies that are funded by certain organizations. That's the truth. Another thing to add to that as well is we want to make sure that AI is going to find the right candidate, and that's really how it should be. Okay, data analysis. Now the last thing here on this specific slide, and the lesson for that matter, is we could use AI to not only look at analytics, but to provide us analysis as well. So reporting, this is really so important for large organizations. Now, if you're using, for example, Zoho, or you're using, for example, Recruitly, whatever systems you are, you need to have reports. You need to really understand the number of contacts, the number of interactions, the number of applications, right? All of these things should be in a view that really makes sense for your organization. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about ethical considerations of AI in hiring. Now, when it comes to AI, we are likely aware that there's been a lot of different news articles on ethics with AI, on bias that AI has been representing, whether intentional or non-intentional, who's going to speculate. But we want to be aware, as a recruiting professional, as a hiring manager, as a HR professional, company owner, whatever our situation is, that if we're going to use AI, we need to follow some of the best practices, especially if we're subjected to governance and compliance structures, and we want to mitigate the likelihood of overlooking some of these concepts or important aspects that we want to consider. Now, in my ethics course, I dive into this much deeper than I'm going to cover in this course, but the highlight areas are as follows. First is transparency. We need to make sure that we let the candidates know that AI is being used to at least analyze the candidate. This is something that's growing in compliance requirements. A lot of countries are enforcing this as well. And so we want to be aware that we want to be transparent in the hiring process. Bias mitigation. We want to make sure that the algorithms that are used, whether they're generative AI or not, are going to be monitored and trained on the specific data sets it's going to be analyzing. As an example, we don't want to have the AI system hire a specific culture only, or to look for a specific race only, or gender, or even veteran status. We want to find the best candidates, of course, but we don't want to use bias. And this may be easier said than done in some cases, but we want to make sure that we are aware of that. Another thing is we should have what's called informed consent. Now, generally, with a lot of the newer systems, this is going to be a disclosure that the candidate has to click a yes or no to, or pop up to actually review. But when it comes to this informed consent, we should be letting the candidate know, hey, we're going to use AI to assess this specific job application that you're putting in, or are you a good fit for the role, right? That should be stated clearly. There should be some type of human oversight. In other words, we shouldn't solely depend on AI to make the hiring decision, at least I would hope not, and that somebody like a hiring manager should be looking at it and saying, okay, well, these candidates are not as good as this candidate, so we're going to hire this person. Lastly, there should be some form of evaluation. Basically, there should be an audit. Now, in the ethics course, I talk about how this is handled. We go through an example, but just be aware that there should be some auditing, governance involved with this. And this is a new area, so realize that not all companies are doing this, and still haven't been mandated to do this yet, depending on where they're located, the industry that they're in, etc. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. Welcome to Module 2. In this module, we'll talk about how AI can be used to actually source and screen applications, resumes, cover letters, etc. When it comes to this module, there's 3 lessons. The first will dive into some of the specific AI-driven tools out there. We'll then go to talk about how resume screening works and skills assessment. We'll talk about the pros and cons and all of these important factors you want to consider. And then I'll dive into chatbots and conversational AI and how it's applied with recruiting specifically. We have a lot to cover in this module, so let's proceed to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about some of the different AI-driven options available for candidate search. Now, be aware that this is an area that is growing rapidly, and there's a lot of tools out there. Some are going to be similar. Some actually use the same language learning model in the back end, but have a different front end. I'll point out one here in a minute. But just be aware that these platforms are going to have various integrations. They may integrate with your CRM now. So, for example, you could use Zoho Recruit. This is an AI-driven solution that has a wealth of different tools and integrations that you could use. HireEZ, Seekout, I'll cover a few of these in a second, as well as Gem, Fetcher, Araya, Intello, and I'm also going to go through a demonstration of a Chrome tool that you could use with LinkedIn. So if you're using LinkedIn Recruiter, this is a great solution for you to integrate with your Chrome browser and actually save yourself a lot of time and work. So I'll cover that here in a minute. It's called Recruit GPT. Okay. Now let's go over now and talk about one of the more robust platforms out there called Zoho Recruit. One of the more powerful solutions is called Zoho Recruit. This is a natural fit, especially if you're already using Zoho as a CRM. And this will allow your recruitment team, your HR, to search for candidates that are already in the CRM, but also integrate with third-party solutions as well. So you could integrate this with LinkedIn or with other solutions like Monster, you name it. The sky's the limit with Zoho. It's widely used, so it's definitely going to be a great fit for a lot of companies. Now, what's also interesting about Zoho is that it does integrate, for example, with ChatGPT. It's going to use OpenAI in the back end and allows recruiters, for example, to not only use AI to look for candidates, but also to write job descriptions, to write interview questions, a lot of cool things that this can do. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Now, another one I want to talk about is called Seekout. This is actually extremely powerful as well. This is ChatGPT based as well. So once again, this is a great tool that can integrate with a lot of Chrome plugins as well and integrations from a third-party solution perspective. Now, this again is fairly straightforward to follow. Now, if you go over here, though, to their demo that they have, this will walk you through how this will work. There's also an online demo you go through and sign up. It's going to walk you through how this works. It's really nice, and it does have, at least from a claim perspective, hundreds of millions of candidates available. So again, great tool to look at. Another one is called HireEZ. Once again, I would recommend that you look at this just like any other tool as, is this the right solution for you or not? Again, does this integrate with your current platform? Does this integrate with your CRM? Are you using a third-party tool now? What is actually your use case? So check out these different platforms. For time purposes, we won't really dive into this too much. I will go into the Recruit GPT demo here after this lesson. Okay, Intello. Now, Intello is an interesting solution from what I would call more or less perspective that is interactive. So this will allow you to create different types of campaigns, but these campaigns can be a little bit more targeted than they may be, for example, in like Zoho, at least from what I've seen. Now, once again, these platforms are moving targets, so be aware of some of the features that may be available at the time of writing the course may actually be different than what you're viewing at the time of the course that you're looking at it. So, with that said, there's a lot of different solutions, and the best way to really understand these is to go through a demo, sign up for a free trial, and check it out. Okay, so in the next lesson, let's now go through a solution called Recruiter GPT. In this lesson, let's go through a demonstration of Recruit GPT and Tombow.ai. Let's go to the demonstration. I'm over here at the Chrome Web Store, and I've already installed Recruiter GPT, but to find it, you just go over here to search. Type in Recruit, and that should bring up Recruiter GPT fairly easily. Now, I already have it installed, so in your case, if you don't have it installed, it'll say Add to Chrome. Once you do that, you'll then want to go over to LinkedIn, and you'll get a pop-up to connect it to LinkedIn. So you'll enter your profile and password, and you'll be connected. Relatively simple. Now, the Chrome extension is going to look like this, as you see. And what's nice about this is it'll go ahead and allow you to enter, create job descriptions. It allows you to also bring up the AI language model, which is called Tombow.ai. And there's also a future capability called Stack Rank. So this will rank cover letters. And you'll see you can just select Notify You when it is available. Now let's go over here to what appears to be a document icon. This will bring up Recruiter GPT on the web. And you can see here I have a job description already created. Now, this job description, I go over here to edit, and I could add related titles, remove them as well. I could add different requirements like the must-have or nice-to-have. So I could change this to 4 years of experience or 3 years of cybersecurity. I could also add additional capabilities. Let's say I want this person to be a DevOps guru as well. I want 2 years of experience, etc. Now, what I could do is create what's called, editor. What I could do now is create what's called a call to action in our email. So I could add a calendar link. For example, if you have Calendly, just add your Calendly link here for the candidate to directly schedule a call with you. Add a phone number if you want. You could also have a separate link, like maybe lead you to a CRM website, or web page, I should say, for the candidate to fill out the application. So there's a lot of things you could do. Over here, I can either select the client to be hidden, or I could have it as an in-house position. So over here, I could select this as an internal position if I want, or a client position that I'm hiring for, or searching for, I should say. Go over here and select in-house. I could select I'm a family-run business, or a leading brand, or whatever you want to call your business. Now, if it's client, I could hide it or not. And again, that's up to you and how you handle that. Now I could put in the pay range or skip. I could add benefits. and then add other benefits as well. I could say, is it remote or hybrid or on-site? Then also add, for example, what would be the benefit to the candidate? They could build a team or have a flexible schedule, etc. Hit submit. Now this will go ahead and edit that description, and that allows me to basically save that, and you'll see how we could use that. Now over here I could also create a new job description if I want as well. It'll allow me to select the industry, whatever I want to choose. And it's very simple to go through. Okay, now I could go over here to stats, so I could turn on stats. What this will do is it'll show me the number of candidates that have applied, number of emails that have been sent. Really cool stuff. Over here I can go to AI emails. This will show all the emails that have been sent by the AI system, and it'll highlight the sender as well, and allows me to search the email. So if I want to search for a solutions architect, I could enter that. I could search for a skill set or a location, whatever I want to search for. Over here would be the stats. Then I go over here to Your AI. Okay. Now the next thing I can do is go over here to Your AI, and this will bring me over to the language learning model. Now the language learning model is called Tombow.ai. This is a LLM, as it's referred to, that is going to be directly catered towards recruiters and HR. Now I could go over here, and let's say I have a job description ready. I could put in a link, so if you have a CRM app and you have a page for that description, just paste it here. Or you go ahead and copy and paste it as well. Now when you go through this, there's a lot here that you could add. I'm going to skip over this. And I'm going to change the font to Arial. I want it to be 14. I'm going to skip that. Now let's say I want to make sure that the candidate has a 2-year degree or 4-year degree, let's say, and I want someone that is going to be, more of a leader. And then how should they apply for the job? By phone, by text, or add a URL, so you can paste the link of the URL here. Or you can put in by email, however you want, and hit submit. Now this will go ahead and put together this updated job description. And as you can see that it has created a different description. I go ahead and select, is it good or not? I go over here and have it started again if I want. I can also copy it or export it to Word. Pretty cool. I could then, if I'm happy with all this, go over here to New Task. It'll bring me back. And let's say I want to create interview questions. Again, paste the link of the job description here, or paste the description and fill in this as whatever is appropriate. And I could put in, let's say if I'm going to interview someone technical, I may want to ask them, how do you deal with challenges in the workplace? And I may add to that as well additional questions like, what is your experience with AWS? And I'll make it more specific with DevOps, just as an example. And again, you could add any number of questions or statements to this, and it will customize that description for you. And it's basically prompting you to basically ask if you not only want the questions, but do you want it to provide you answers as well? Let's say yes in this case. Do you want to have it predict the type of questions that the candidate may ask you? So that's sort of cool, right? So let's say you have a sales engineering role or you have a help desk role. Maybe you want an idea of the type of questions that the candidate will ask, and therefore you could be a little bit more prepared to provide them answers. So it's not just about you getting answers from them, it's about you giving answers as well, which is really cool in my opinion. Not every platform does that. Okay, so let's see how this does. Now again, I only did a 30-minute interview, so this won't take as long. One thing I did notice is if you add over an hour or 2 hours, I think it was, it definitely will hang in some cases, so you may want to check that. All right, you can see here it actually provides different questions. Now again, I won't go through these to validate, for example, how accurate it is or how good the questions are, but this is a good way for you to get a template and an idea, especially in an environment that doesn't have all the technical professionals there to do the interview, just as an example, or to ask the interview. So in this case here, AWS DevOps, these are actually really solid AWS services that would be related to DevOps. So right now that looks okay. Do I like how the question's worded? No, but at least it gives me something to prompt the candidate on. But let's say I'm the interviewer and I'm a manager. I may not understand what these are, but if the candidate says, oh sure, I've used AWS Code Pipeline, Elastic Beanstalk, CloudFormation, then these are services to creating a DevOps service or a pipeline, right? So this is really good from that perspective. Here is manage domain categories. Now, what is domain? So if I go to add a category, I could add additional categories. So for example, it could be education, or I could add technical training. So education is going to be typically K-12 or college, secondary. But maybe it's adult technical training. So I could add that. And then I could add a website. I could also add a different color. And this will just allow me to aggregate my statistics in a much easier fashion. So for example, not only can I tell the job description works really well for this sector, but maybe it's not working as well for this specific sector. Just a lot of things you can do with the stats. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about automated resume screening and skills assessment. Chances are your organization is likely already screening resumes with some sort of AI system, and likely as well skills assessment is performed this way in a lot of cases. Now, the reason that we generally want to have resumes screened is that it saves us time. It's going to help us improve accuracy of the resumes that are sent to, let's say, the hiring manager or the hiring team. It creates efficiency, and it should also help the organization achieve its hiring goals quicker. Now, there's pros and cons, of course, to automated resume screening. It's going to speed up our process, could help eliminate bias, and filter more effectively based on specific keywords or other criteria. As far as cons are concerned, generally it's not going to be able to determine, is this candidate going to be a good cultural fit? Has the experience been really relevant to the company or not? Or could it be relevant to our company or not? Right? These are things that AI just won't really be able to do. It's not going to be able to pick up as well on some of the specific terms and how they're used as well in a lot of cases or phrased. But just be aware that these pros and cons will vary, of course, based on your organization and how you're using AI. With resume screening, we want to look at the right ATS. Can we search? Can we match resumes to keywords? Can we also enhance profiles as well? This is important. Machine learning models are really good at certain tasks, and does the screener use a efficient, modern AI system or not? These are things we want to look at. And then also, too, how does it really integrate with other HR systems, such as, let's say, Workday or a CRM? What exactly is being used, right? These are things we want to look at. So with that said, just be aware that resume screening is something that AI can do quite efficiently, just like with skills assessment as well. Let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's go to a whiteboard and discuss how resume screening works with an AI system. When it comes to resume processing, it's important to realize that there's certainly a couple different approaches to it, and every system, every AI integration will probably have its own little approach. But at a high level, let's walk through how this would work. So we have a company, and this company just had HR post a new job. So the job's been posted. And once that job's posted, we then would have a candidate apply. So they submit their resume. That's entered into the database. From the database, what then would occur is that the AI system, which is based on NLP, natural language processing, will be looking at the resume and comparing it to whatever that job description that was placed in that job application, or that job description, I should say. So it's going to go ahead and match the description that was provided and then compare it to what's in the resume. Now, after that occurs, this is what commonly, at its simplest form, happens. So it's in the database, AI is doing its magic, and it's going to compare the keywords that are in the description to what is actually on the candidate's resume. So in this case here, the candidate has 2 of, let's say, 5 keywords. Now this is a little bit simplistic because it's going to be a little bit more to this, but at a high level, this is really what it's doing. It's going to then provide, as a result of that comparison, the ability for reporting. So you'll be able to get a list of candidates that will match a certain percentage, generally 5 out of 10 keywords, 10 out of 15, whatever those numbers that are set to. It'll also help you identify the best candidates. So if it sees that there's 5 candidates that have, let's say, 100% match, they'll likely be selected over the ones that only have 2 or 3. Then once that's done, once you have your candidate list, you could then have the system send out an interview schedule or request. And this can be done in a number of ways. It could be via Zoom. It could be an online interview platform as well that's used, however you choose. From a high level, it's relatively simple. From when you submit the job description into your HR systems, to your networks that you're using to find candidates, and how AI can be used to compare the resume to the job description. Let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about chatbots and conversational AI. Now, we've all been to those websites that have those pop-ups, the little character that says, "I'm here, do you have a question?" Right? We've all seen those. And at the end of this lesson, I'll go into one of the more popular ones called Paradox as well. But with that said, why would we want to have a chatbot in the world of recruiting? Well, we want to be able to screen more efficiently. We want to be able to allow FAQs to be answered. We also want to increase engagement. Another reason is to have the ability to automate. Let's say the candidate fills out everything or has a question that can't be answered. Maybe you want to have the candidate be able to get an email or have the ability of the chatbot to pop up the calendar to schedule a call or pop up another link for the candidate to fill out like an email form, just as an example. And the goal is to really be proactive. If you want really good candidates, having this proactive approach can possibly help your organization find better candidates quicker. So what are the benefits that we could realize in the world of using a chatbot? Well, it could streamline candidate screening. It could elevate the engagement. So, for example, if there's a question or let's say the application process isn't clear, maybe they go to an FAQ and find an answer. It's also, importantly, probably one of the better benefits, to be honest, is that it's available all the time. So when they go to the website, the chatbot is there for them to prompt as needed. So now let's go over to one of the more popular ones called Paradox.ai. Now, Paradox AI is a widely used HR-focused solution set, and it has a really solid chatbot that can be used, and here is an example over here of what it would look like. Now, with this solution, it allows, for example, the candidate to ask questions to be able to get answers to, let's say, the application process or the interview process as well, questions about who to contact, all of these different things that may come up. So this is a popular one that is widely used. Now, conversational AI is going to combine a wealth of different technologies such as machine learning, NLP, AI, etc. Now, the goal of using all these technologies is to really help identify patterns, provide a better response. One of the things, too, with conversational AI is that it gives the ability to basically preempt or prompt. And this is important as well because you can look at the context and be able to determine what would be the next question or what would be the next thing that the candidate might be looking for, right? It's really important to realize that when implemented properly, this can really increase your engagement and also provide much better statistics or data analysis as well. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. Welcome to Module 3. In this module, let's talk about how AI can be used as part of the interview process. First, it's important to realize that video interviews, when they're performed, can be integrated with AI systems to actually look at how the interviewee reacts, how they answer questions, and provides insight into how the candidate performed. A lot of great possibilities with the video interviews. Now, we could also use predictive analytics as well, and then we'll also talk about what explainable AI is and how we could use this type of AI to build trust in the hiring process. Let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about video interviews and behavior analytics. Now, AI can be used in the front end of the interview, it can be used in the middle, or it can be used in the back end. What exactly do I mean by all that? I'll go through one example here in a second, but just be aware that we could use AI in a multitude of different approaches. Now, when we use AI in the front end, what we could do is have AI perform the actual interview. And this is where the interviewer will actually be the AI system that will be prompting the interviewee to answer questions. And then based on that feedback, the AI system will provide a grade, a scoring report effectively to the company that is setting up the interview. Then after that, what typically would happen is there'll be a second round of interviews, and then there'll be a real person asking the questions. And then AI could be in the middle in the sense that it's looking for behavioral patterns. It could also be prompting the interviewer to ask certain questions as well. And then in the back end, it could be really providing insight into the behavior of the interviewee and how they handle the questions, provide sort of I wouldn't say a score report, but more of a analytical assessment of how the interview went and any feedback that can be provided. The goal is to get feedback from a multitude of different approaches. So when it comes to AI, be aware that we could use this, of course, for candidate screening, but it could also be used for facilitation, for feedback as well. Now, when it comes to candidate screening, as I had stated, it could be looking for facial expressions. Generally, too, one of the things it's good at is to pick up on keywords that are used. Another thing, too, is it'll look at how the resume actually matches up to how the interviewee actually responds, which is sort of an interesting configuration approach that can be used now in some of the newer systems. There's this platform called interviewer.ai, and this is a great approach in the sense that this gives the company that is going to use this platform a lot of different approaches to integration, but also how we could deploy it as well. So for example, you would post an opportunity, AI system would effectively be able to integrate with third-party sites such as LinkedIn or your HR platform. But then after that, we could then have interviews set up, scheduled with the right candidates. It could screen that initially, and then you would get forwarded a report of the AI-assessed candidates and provided some insight into who might be the best fit for the role. And of course, that would provide data for you to really make that decision. So with that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about predictive analytics and hiring decisions. We know that AI can be used to perform interviews. We also learned that AI can be used to provide an assessment to determine behavioral patterns and how well someone performed. But we could also use AI to predict how well a candidate may do in the role, or what candidate would be the best fit. This is called predictive analytics. The goal of using predictive analytics is to make sure that we do not have any potential discrepancies or bias, as the word that we like to use nowadays, is used in the hiring decision in the sense that it's not a person making the decision, but it's the AI system. Now, of course, AI can be biased and it could be discriminatory. However, that's a discussion for an ethics course. So as long as the AI is unbiased and is programmed, data is entered correctly in the learning model, then this won't be an issue. So with businesses, they can use this to really be proactive in the hiring process. Another important thing to consider with predictive analytics is that if this is properly implemented, it can definitely lead to better decisions. It could also save a lot of time. Now, when you scale this, this is where the time savings should really be documented. And one of the ways to document this is to use some of these AI systems to really determine what team members are doing what, how they're performing the interviews, how well the interview candidates, for that matter, are doing, which ones are to the hot list, how long the process takes. All of this analytics that's collected can really provide insight into how much time is really saved. As an example, if it takes 2 months to hire someone the traditional way, having a recruiter get on LinkedIn, go back and forth with LinkedIn mail, phone calls, setting up interviews, and use AI, and you're able to document that instead of 2 months, you now can have the hiring process occur in less than, let's say, 4 weeks or 3 weeks. Then that's usually an easy sell when it comes to AI. The goal, of course, is to hire without bias. But once again, we know that people can be biased and AI can be biased. Now, in the ethics course that I go through, I cover how AI can be biased. But in a nutshell, it all depends on the data. So, for example, the systems are only as good as the data that's entered and who is entering the data, for that matter. Okay. Lastly, I don't know if this is really true a lot of times, but I want to put it down. It can help with employee retention. Now, I haven't really figured out or talked to anyone that can attribute employee retention as a result of using AI predictive analytics. That may be true, but I haven't seen it. But I want to put it down because that could be a potential benefit to the organization. Let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about explainable AI and how we could use it to build trust in the hiring process. Okay, let's clarify what it is first. Explainable AI is, at its highest level, how the AI system is making the decision. Let's say you're a recruiter and you use interview AI. And you want to understand, out of those 100 resumes that you ran through the system, why it chose the top 10. That is a high-level example of explainable AI. You want to understand how the system came to that decision. What were the parameters it's looking for? So it's important to realize that we're using explainable AI to provide transparency to the users, to the potential candidates as well, not only just the company. So with explainable AI, the goal is to really get around that discreteness, that approach to making a decision that just isn't super clear. And with explainable AI, the goal is to provide a concise, clear answer. So I hope that made sense. Okay. Another thing to be aware of is that the recommendations are based on some sort of facts that the AI system came about. And we may or may not want to know exactly those details. That's really based on the learning model on the very back end. And as a user, you're not going to have insight into how the AI system looked at all these data points, ran all these numbers, pulled all this information, and came to a decision, right? You don't want to know the hundreds of pages of possible information. You just want that one short sentence of why. So let me give you some examples. You run those 100 resumes. Out of those 100 resumes, it picks 10. You want the top 10. You're going to ask it, why did you pick the top 10? Well, maybe because they had 80% or more of the keywords that you were looking for in the job description. Or they had jobs, or they're coming from a job that they're in the job for more than 2 years. Whatever those parameters are that were set. So the goal is to provide that transparency. And with explainable AI, that can be accomplished. So explainable AI, we want to make sure that we have trust. That is so important not only for the interviewer, but for the interviewee as well. When it comes to explainable AI, it's important to realize that we're going to really want to have transparency and trust. We want to mitigate bias. We want to have a data-driven decision-making process, and it can also help us improve as well our hiring process, improve upon candidates and how they're hired, what we're looking for, a lot of great benefits when explainable AI is implemented properly. Let's move on to the next lesson. Welcome to Module 4. In this module, let's talk about how AI can be used to improve upon our training and development. In this module, we're going to talk about how we could use AI to identify skill gaps. We could also use it to provide personalized learning. And then we could also use AI as well to provide what's called microlearning and adaptive learning as well. Let's go ahead and proceed on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about how we could use AI in upskilling. When it comes to using AI to identify skill gaps, it's important to realize what exactly is a skill gap. Now, first, a skill gap is generally considered an area that the employee or contractor, whoever it may be, needs to improve upon or is missing in their skill sets. It could be a cloud professional that needs to have Google Cloud instead of AWS. It could be a human resources professional that might need to take additional ethics training. Whatever that skills gap is, then we want to use AI to help identify that and provide insight into how that skill gap can be closed. So when it comes to identifying the skills gap, we want to first understand the organizational objectives. What exactly does the organization require and when these gaps need to be completed? We should also, of course, understand that each job role should have defined requirements. Basically, each position should have very detailed information, especially from a keyword perspective, about what's required. So if you have a programmer or a developer, do they need to have C++? Do they need to have DevOps? Do they need to have networking? What is that requirement that needs to be completed or filled or met? We want to also perform surveys. We want to look at skill assessments. And of course, importantly, we need to have metrics to determine where we are and where we need to go. We need to look as well as different frameworks that need to be met. For example, a lot of companies may follow ISO and they have very strict requirements. Maybe you have an organization that follows CMMI or Project Management Institute. Again, there could be a number of different frameworks and standards to follow. We also want to look at feedback. Now, if you have customers, you probably, of course, would have a sales team. Maybe that sales team needs to get upskilled in a new product or a new solution. Want to look at the benchmarks from that industry that you're in. Look at the skill inventory as well. And then focus groups may help. So how do you fill the gap? Look at reskilling, look at upskilling, and also provide digital training as well. Now, a lot of companies will provide some form of a subscription-based online platform access. So that could be to Udemy for Business, it could be Go1, it could be Pluralsight, could be edX, whatever that is. Chances are most companies have some kind of access to some platform for the employees to get trained on. So when it comes to upskilling, it's really about taking the current skill sets and adding to it and having them actually meet the current requirements. Now, I always find it interesting that some companies consider upskilling to be reskilling and vice versa. But in reality, if you're in, for example, technology, you're constantly having to learn. Now, if you're in finance or you're in legal or your company, has a totally different sector like manufacturing, whatever it is, you may not need to have your employees constantly be upskilled, right? Maybe for safety if it's in manufacturing, whatever that is. When it comes to upskilling, it's important for a number of different reasons, of course. Everything from productivity to recruitment to being able to take on new tasks, being agile. A lot of things to consider. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about how we could use AI to improve personalized learning. Now, when it comes to personalized learning, we know that generally we only want to take the training that we really need to. And so this is true not only for the student, but also for the employer or for the school, whatever that scenario is. So when we use AI, we want to make sure that the content provided is going to meet the objectives that have been set. The goal is to use AI to adapt as needed. So if you have an employee that over time has different skill sets, those skill sets need to be improved upon, and we could use AI to adapt as needed. Some of the benefits could be everything from having a very customized learning path to adjusting to the pace, to providing better retention, and also real-time feedback. Another thing that's not here is with AI now, we could also add gamification. We could have it adjust for participation. So if we have certain students perform better than others, let's say in a group, then we could grade each student and provide basically emojis or badges or whatever we choose. Some of the platforms that are widely used could be Newton, Duolingo, Smart Sparrow, Dreambox, IXL Learning, and also too a lot of the open platforms that are used for content such as Udemy or Pluralsight, and I'm sure there's a lot more that are out there as well. They use AI in a lot of cases to adjust as needed. So just be aware there's a lot of different options with learning, especially with personalization now. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about microlearning. Now, microlearning is going to be an approach that is commonly employed more and more, where instead of providing a full course, that might be 2 or 3 hours, we're providing short little bursts of training, 10 minutes there, 5 minutes there, 15 minutes, whatever it is. The goal of microlearning is that it makes it more interactive and accomplishable in the sense that the student, the learner, the employee, doesn't feel overwhelmed by having to take a 3-hour course, let's say. Instead, it's 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, whatever it is. Generally, too, this is a great approach where we can include additional content like infographics, social media posts, etc. Now, implementing microlearning is typically done with short videos. It's typically done implementing mobile technology as well. And another point is this works even better when we incorporate this with live learning or on-site training, however we're going to look at it. And we would call that more hybrid learning. One of the things about the AI algorithms that are typically employed is that they're going to be more adaptive in the sense that the personalization can be adaptive from how the student interacts with the platform. As an example, As an example, if you go to a learning site and you type in cloud computing, you'll get courses for cloud computing. Now let's say you learn about DevOps and AWS. It'll then adapt to provide you courses or content related to those subjects. The goal again is to increase engagement, to really accommodate learning as needed, so providing different options is really a great approach. When it comes to adaptive learning, it's important to realize having a learning path is really important, providing feedback. One of the platforms that I like is O'Reilly because they provide you not only a ton of video content, but they provide you books as well and video lessons that are short, provides you the ability to create your own lesson plan. So there's a lot of things that can be adaptive. Udemy has great features as well in that area. Try to move on to the next lesson. Welcome to Module 5. In this module, we want to discuss how we could implement AI in our talent acquisition strategy. This module has 3 specific lessons, so we'll talk about exactly how we could use AI solutions for our organization. We'll talk about integrating these solutions with current systems. And we'll talk about some of the changes we'll need to look at when we build a culture of AI in recruitment. We have a lot to cover, so let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's discuss how we can evaluate AI solutions for our organization. Now, when it comes to evaluating anything, there's certainly some best practices. For this lesson and course, we don't want to dive into the true technical concerns. We want to get a high-level overview. So from that perspective, we want to first understand what a business use case is. What exactly do I mean by that? Well, a use case is really identifying the requirement and being able to meet those requirements with that technology. The goal is to use a technology that is going to solve the challenge that we have at hand. If, for example, we're currently using a CRM and that CRM doesn't have AI as part of its integration capabilities, then we may need to look at another CRM that we could integrate whatever AI requirements we have. When it comes to solution requirements, this is going to be everything from the functions, the adaptability, the integration, scalability, etc. As an example, APIs are going to be really important. Integrating with solutions like Google Chrome could be very important because if you think about it, everyone's using browsers, so being able to integrate with Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome is going to be something that we definitely need to look at. Also, too, we need to look at security as well as pricing. When it comes to pricing and financials, this is an area that can get a little tricky. We may need to consider as well what exactly is our ROI. So ROI is return on investment. If a company is going to invest, let's say $600,000 into a new platform and they deploy the platform, then how long will it take for the company to make that investment back? That is called ROI. And with AI systems, to be fair and honest, it can be pretty tricky. What I have typically seen and have had some direct involvement in has really come down to, I would say, 2 main factors. One is going to be the current technology baseline of the organization, but also how well the company understands their own ability to meet the requirements and how do they price a service. So for example, if it's a SaaS solution, it's easier to typically make an ROI on than if it's going to be an internal system that might not generate revenue. So there's a lot of different factors. Also too, when we integrate with different systems, there's a lot of costs that go into that, and a lot of these costs are hard to really determine. And what I mean by that is if you go out there and you want to use, let's say, Zapier. Now Zapier is used for API integration, and if you're a company that has a lot of social media sites, a lot of different CRMs that they use, or LMSs, you name it, they all use APIs, and the cost of maintaining them and upgrading them and maintaining licenses and agreements is hard to predict. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about integrating AI with their current processes. Let's say that you're currently using 3 different platforms to find your resumes, to recruit your talent. It could be ZipRecruiter, it could be LinkedIn, Career Builder, Monster, Dice, whatever it is. And having multitudes of different platforms to maintain and accounts to maintain, etc., can be sort of challenging. So maybe you want to look at using an AI service that is going to be able to integrate with a multitude of different sources and just have one portal to really just be focused on. This can really be significant into how a company can really elevate its AI strategy. So if you're using AI in talent acquisition now, then you could really add to a lot of the different benefits of AI by expanding your use. We look at candidate matching. We could look at having a better workflow. We could use AI to automate the task. So instead of you sending the thank you for applying letter, have AI do that. Or set up an interview time. Very simple to do with a lot of these programs. And I would encourage you to evaluate, of course, several of these programs that are out there to determine what integrates with your HR platform. Look at predictive analytics as well, and also try to improve upon your DEI as needed. When it comes to integrating AI, it is a very wide area, and it's a very time-consuming area as well, I would say that. Just because of the fact that a lot of the companies I've seen have typically employed what I would call more legacy approaches still, and so trying to move from a legacy to a non-legacy, a cloud platform or a SaaS service where a lot of these AI platforms are hosted can be a little bit of a challenge. But with that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about building a culture of AI in recruitment. Now, change is always a challenge. No matter what the organization, there's always going to be a culture or a certain process or patterns to follow. And changing these can be overcome. It can take some time. You typically need to have organizational buy-in and really some approach to governance as well. But when we consider building that culture of using AI, we want to look at having leadership buy-in. We need the advocacy of the executives. We also need to have training. We need to also look at how we communicate as well. Also consider how the interaction with the tools are used. Making sure that we have templates set up is a good approach. And when it comes to AI, we want to consider what types of prompts we use, the type of systems that are used. This is really important. So if you're using Zoho recruit, then you might want to look at that differently than if you're using Salesforce or you're using something integrated from a third-party platform. Whatever that is, you need to look at it on how collaboration could really be enabled. Ethics and compliance. This is another area that is increasingly challenging in the sense that data is a commodity. And what I mean is a lot of organizations look at data as not just something that should be kept private, but should also be sold. And that is really a conflict. And so we need to look at how the data is handled. Lastly, we want to look at pilot programs, implement the programs, and test it out, see how it all works, get feedback, right? It's really about working together, collaborating, and defining what the outcome expectations are, and then trying to meet them. That's really how we want to look at a pilot. Another term I like to use is a proof of concept. So go out there, work with the partners that you're going to partner with on AI. Contact Zoho, contact Salesforce, contact Workday, whoever it is. Look at the potential of having a partner in this. This is going to really help you succeed a lot faster for sure and can really reduce that ramp-up time. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. Welcome to Module 6. In this module, we want to discuss the future of AI in talent management. We'll be discussing different trends. We'll talk about innovations. We'll also talk about how you can build a sustainable talent pipeline. We'll also talk about automation and also understand how humans play a role in this as well. We'll go through a course review, and then we'll have the course closeout as well. We have a lot to cover, so let's proceed to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about emergent trends and innovations. So currently, we're seeing a lot of automated sourcing, chatbots, and voice bots, and one of the areas that definitely is growing is around interview scheduling and also video interviews. Now, from an emerging trends perspective, we're also seeing different types of integrations. So I've noticed a lot more when it comes to having options for Chrome plugins or Edge for that matter. So that's nice to see. Another area is around development, as well as a focus area for software and SaaS companies as well. With that said, let's move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about building a sustainable talent pipeline with AI. Now, the main goal of any HR or recruiting organization is probably really focused on trying to fill the positions as quickly as possible. Now, to attain that, we want to use, of course, a lot of different types of technologies and have a pipeline set up that is able to perform certain tasks at certain times. So, for example, how do we source candidates? And then how do we screen candidates? And then what kind of data have we collected about the candidates? What type of degrees? Where are they located? All of this data can be aggregated and it really can help us as an organization to be able to determine, can we improve here? Can we change this? These are things that we want to consider. So having this pipeline designed in a manner that can be maintained and improved upon is so important. Making sure that we have engagement and provide opportunities for development as well is very important. Let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. In this lesson, let's talk about the role of humans in talent management. We know that AI can play a number of different roles. We know that it can provide great benefits. It has the capacity to scale faster than humans. It can be cost effective. However, AI really can't solve every problem. It can't create efficiencies everywhere. It really can't negotiate between people. It's just not meant to do that. So as a talent organization, we still need to make the right decisions on how AI is used. We need to build those relationships. We need to determine, is there a cultural fit? Do we have the right communication style? We may need to realize as well that AI can provide great insight into training plans and courses and development, but it's probably not going to provide us individualized coaching. Now, one of the areas that it definitely won't help with is typically with conflict resolution. We need people for that. Decision making and leadership and vision. These are important aspects as well. In summary, be aware that AI is going to provide organizations some great benefits, but it's not going to be able to solve every problem. It's not going to be able to increase productivity everywhere. We still need that human touch. With that said, let's move on to the closeout of the course. Before we close out the course, let's go through a short summary. We learned that talent management is all about integrating recruitment, development, and retention strategies to improve employee potential and performance of the organization as well. AI can transform HR, talent management, in a number of different ways. Gartner put out a report that stated about 81% of HR leaders are using AI, or I should add as well, will use AI to boost process efficiency. Candidate sourcing means that actively seeking suitable candidates for specific openings. We learned as well that effective sourcing with the right tools can definitely improve upon talent acquisition. AI-powered platforms can really expedite candidate identification and recruitment compared to traditional methods. AI's impact on hiring definitely can raise ethical considerations, and we need to be aware that AI is only as good as what? As how it's been programmed. AI uses different learning models, and because of those learning models and how they're developed and how they're trained, basically data entry, where they're finding information, this can really impact, again, the ethics of that AI system. Now, we could use AI to analyze candidate responses, and this could be done with different platforms such as Interview.ai or Zoho, a lot of great options out there. Now, upskilling and reskilling are really the same thing. The goal is to improve the employee's ability to perform work better. Now, bots are another way we could use to really provide interaction with potential candidates. Conversational AI enables chatbots to interact more naturally with users. There's a lot of benefits when we learn that some of them could be increased performance, real-time assessment. Now, as far as emerging trends, we're definitely seeing quite a bit around automated sourcing, using chatbots for engagement, interview scheduling as well. We did discuss Interview AI as an example. There's a lot of different learning platforms out there, and we know that AI can really provide us benefits, but it can't solve all our challenges when it comes to HR and talent. For example, we need to have humans to really provide the strategic decision making, to build the relationships, to deal with conflict, cultural fit assessments. Now, AI adoption is really an approach to deal with change in the organization, and the goal is to look at technologies and build them in, plan them out, I should say, as well, into an organization so that the company can really make use of AI. And lastly, AI automation is really meant to enhance talent management, but we know that we need to have humans. So in summary, just be aware that AI can really provide increased performance, better efficiency, a better return on investment, but we need humans. So with that said, let's move on to the closeout of the course. Resources and course closeout. Before we close out the course, let's make sure you're aware of some of the resources available with Tech Commanders. Definitely go to techcommanders.com and find the new courses, the new blog posts, etc. Also check out myblockchainexperts.net. We also have a GitHub as well and numerous content partners. Now there's a lot of great courses available on different subjects, from FinOps to Google Cloud to security, you name it, blockchain, fintech. Lots of courses available for you to dive into if any of these are of interest. Also, too, there's popular ebooks available as well on Amazon Kindle, and certainly check them out as well. And there's free infographics that are available on Tech Commanders for you to grab as well. Lastly, please be aware we have a new program that helps people get into the world of cloud computing called Cloud Interview Ace. This is a 7-week program that provides you direct coaching and expert advice around interviewing, preparation, resumes, etc. And lastly, I wanted to personally thank you for joining the course. I wish you much success in your career, and certainly reach out if I could be of assistance to you in the future. Have a great day.